And there's a square microphone up there. If you'll put that on your lapel somewhere, please. And if you'll make sure you speak in the microphone so that the members of the jury can hear.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, if you'll state your name for the record.
Carlos Salinas.
All right, state, you may proceed.
Your Honor. Good morning, Investigator. Could you please tell the jury who you're currently employed with?
Bexar County Sheriff's Office.
How long have you been employed with the Bexar County Sheriff's Office?
19 years.
What's your current position with the Sheriff's Department?
I'm a supervisor for the mental health unit.
Have you also been an investigator with the Sheriff's Department?
Yes.
That's not your current position for that?
Correct.
Can you please explain to the jury, in your career, what did it take for you to become an investigator with the Sheriff's Department?
So you start your career in law enforcement as a patrol officer, and then you take a test involving policy procedure, penal code, court CCP, and also you do a review board, and then you get placed in line for promotion based on how well you did.
Okay. And from the time that you began your career at the Sheriff's Department, how long did it take you to get promoted to an investigator?
I spent 5 years as a patrol officer and then promoted to investigator.
And before your current assignment, how long were you an investigator with the Sheriff's?
7 years.
During that 7 year time frame, what kind of cases were you assigned to investigate?
I started my first year in the general investigation unit, and then I transferred over to our child safe unit having to do with child crimes.
So would that have been about 6 years you did that?
Yes.
Over the course of those 6 years, how many cases would you say you investigated regarding child abuse?
I don't have an exact number, but probably in the thousands.
So once cases come across that get responded to by the initial officers, how do those cases end up getting assigned to investigators?
So there's a couple of ways. Essentially, a patrol deputy will take a report, and if there is an investigator on duty, then they will call for an investigator, depending on what's the nature of the crime is. That investigator will answer up and get details about it and then take that case. Or sometimes it's assigned by a supervisor, depending on who took the report or when it was taken.
Do you recall being assigned a case involving Mr. Alexander Rodriguez?
Yes.
Do you recall how that case became assigned to you?
Yes, I was on duty at the time. Deputy Severo was dispatched to the call. He received the details and contacted for child safe, and then I answered up on duty.
Yes. So since you answered the call, did the case get assigned to you?
Yes.
Okay. Now, does being an investigator child safe mean you only deal with cases in a particular part of Bexar County, or all cases within Bexar County involving sexual abuse of a child get assigned to your unit?
Not just sexual abuse cases, physical abuse, child deaths, anything that would possibly be considered a child crime.
That's with all Bexar County?
Within incorporated Bexar County.
Okay. Being currently a sergeant at the time investigator with the Sheriff's Department, are you also certified peace officer in state of Texas?
Yes.
Now you mentioned you were on duty when you got the call from Deputy Severo. Do you recall what date that was?
I do not.
Do you recall if you were working on September the 15th, 2022?
Yes.
Do you remember what shift you were working that day?
All investigators at that time worked from 8 o'clock till 6 in the evening.
So that would have been your shift for the day.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you recall receiving a call for assistance while you were on duty that day?
From Deputy Severo, yes.
And do you remember what type of call that was related to?
It was an outcry of sexual abuse from a child.
What information did you receive up to that point?
Up to that point, that an outcry had been made to a school counselor, and that the mother was making a report of said outcry.
Okay, so once you got that information, what was the first step that you?
In that sense, I received details of when the last incident had occurred. Um, and then once I received the details of that, then I proceeded with the investigation.
How did you go about proceeding with the investigation?
In this case, this is what we call the delayed outcry, where the last incident happened further than 120 hours, which gives us the window to retrieve DNA evidence. Once I found that out, I told Deputy Severo to write his report and that I would follow up to schedule a forensic interview with the child in question.
You mentioned delayed outcry. Could you briefly explain to the jury what it means to have a delayed outcome?
Okay. Yeah. So a delayed outcry is when an event happens, sexual abuse or physical abuse, and the outcry is made past the time when physical evidence can be gathered. In this sense, it's sexual abuse. We have a window of 120 hours of where we can possibly retrieve DNA evidence from bodies, from clothing, from bed sheets, any place that we can possibly look at. And then in this sense, it had been years after the last incident, so there was no DNA evidence to gather.
During your time investigating these types of crimes, how often would you see cases involving delayed outcry?
It was a majority of our cases.
Do you recall in the time frame what the child's demeanors have been like when you investigated these types of cases with delayed outcries?
I'm sorry, say it again.
So cases that you just mentioned to the jury, that might have been confusing, my apologies. But you described to the jury that you've investigated many cases involving delayed outcries, correct?
Correct.
And each of those had different victims involving children, correct?
Correct.
Do you recall each of the demeanors of the child in each of those cases?
Objection, relevance.
Sustained.
Okay. To your knowledge and in your training experience, do all children react the same to abuse?
No.
Can a child always portray abuse early on?
Objection, speculation.
It's within his purview as an investigator and his training experience.
You need to lay the foundation.
We'll come back to that. As part of your investigation, did you help assist the scheduling of a forensic interview?
Yes.
Can you please explain to the jury what a forensic interview is?
So a forensic interview is where a trained professional talks to the victim or the person alleging abuse. In this sense, it's a child. They have training in where they sit down, they question the person that's being interviewed, and I observe in another room live what's going on during that interview. And yeah, we talk about incidents that have happened in regards to the offense or the alleged offense.
So you did attend that interview with this victim?
Yes.
After the forensic interview was completed, what did you do?
After the forensic interview was completed, I conducted an interview with the child's mother.
You recall when that interview took place?
Directly after the forensic interview.
For the same day?
Same day.
Okay. Did you attempt to make contact at all with the defendant, Mr. Alexander Rodriguez?
Yes.
Were you successful in doing so?
No.
Sorry, did you know what a SANE exam is?
Yes.
Could you please explain to the jury what that is?
SANE exam is a procedure where samples are taken to gather DNA evidence from a person's body, both victim and suspect.
I should have asked this beforehand, but the acronym SANE, do you know what that stands for?
Sexual assault nurse exam.
So that's what you just described to the jury?
Correct.
Typically, in your experience, when is a SANE exam performed?
Within, when an offense happens within 120 hours.
And again, you mentioned 120 hours. Why is that time frame important?
That's the window where DNA evidence can be present, within that amount of time. Just depends on what type of fluid or DNA evidence can be presented.
Do you recall if a SANE exam was performed in this case?
No,
And why was one not done?
because it was past the 120 hours.
Do you know if the victim was offered the opportunity to undergo a SANE exam?
Yes, we do offer a non-acute SANE exam post a forensic interview. If there is an outcry of sexual abuse during that forensic interview, we refer to the Center for Miracles to conduct, I guess, a less abrasive medical exam by a SANE nurse. And the child is then given the opportunity to talk about what happened, and also there's an exam done in the areas that were affected during the outcry.
Just a couple of things. We'll talk about some technical stuff right there. You mentioned the word acute and non-acute. Could you please explain the difference between those two things?
Yes, acute is the same exam that's conducted within the 120 hours where DNA evidence is gathered and sent to a lab for um, um, analysis, essentially. And then non-acute is the delayed outcry, where if an exam is done by a nurse just to make sure everything's okay, and see if anything is affected during the alleged incidents.
You mentioned SANE nurses. Well, you know what SANE nurses?
Do I know what a SANE nurse is? Yes.
Have you told the jury what a SANE nurse is?
So it's a nurse that's trained in retrieving evidence and knowing knowing what to look for sexual assault victims, and see if evidence is present in that.
You also mentioned Center for Miracles. Could you please explain the jury what Center for Miracles is?
It's they're a branch of the Children's Hospital of San Antonio that specializes in child care, and they mostly for uh, victims of sexual assault, physical assault, and everything like that.
During your investigation, do you know if the victim in the case articulated where the events took place of abuse?
Yes.
And do you know where that was?
The suspect's home.
During your investigation, were you able to determine if that was within Bexar County, Texas?
Yes.
To your knowledge, was the victim herself within Bexar County, Texas?
Yes.
Did you attempt at all to go to the scene of where the sexual abuse took place?
No.
Why not?
Essentially, there was no physical evidence to gather since it was past that window. And the only reason I would have to go to that location if there were circumstances where the suspect wanted me to interview him at that home. But again, no physical evidence together, so I didn't make a location.
So you didn't have any reason to go to the location at that time?
Correct.
Being that the abuse happened years after when the outcry was actually made, would you expect for there to have been evidence at the scene?
No.
What else did you do during the course of your investigation after all that was?
I attempted to contact the suspect and he never returned any phone calls. This case was referred to CPS. I talked to their investigator to see if they were able to make contact with the alleged suspect, and they did at this point. So I just kind of asked if he denied the allegations or if it was brought up at any point, and they said yes, he denied the allegations, and I put that in my report.
Did you do anything else in your investigation?
Just type up a summary of what was done during the investigation, what was said during the forensic interview, and presented to the district attorney's office.
What was the conclusion of your investigation?
Conclusion of my investigation that an outcry was made of alleged sexual abuse for continuous sexual abuse of a child, based on the outcry that was made by the child. And there was, and then I turned it in. That's basically what I did.
When you say you turned it in, do you mean you filed the case with our office?
Yes, with the district attorney's office.
The district attorney's office. Do you file every case that you investigate with the district attorney's office?
No.
And why may you want to file versus not file a case with our office?
There are myriad of reasons. In this case, the outcry was very detailed. There were sensory details said during the forensic interview, something that was brought up and everything like that, that seemed pretty convincing that this may have happened. So I presented that evidence to the district attorney's office to see was, prosecuted.
May I have a brief comment, John?
Yes.
As the session draws to a close in Burke County, Texas, the testimony presented during this hearing underscores the importance of thorough investigative work, professional clarity, and procedural timing. The session centered around the account of investigator Carlos Salinas provides viewers with a detailed window into how delayed outcry cases are managed and evaluated before being presented to the district attorney's office. Judge Stephanie Boyd maintained a measured and balanced presence throughout the hearing. Her approach was consistent with judicial standards, ensuring that all procedural elements were respected, while guiding the attorneys to remain within legal boundaries. Rulings were firm but fair, especially when objections were raised regarding speculative questions or relevance. Judge Boyd's ability to steer the conversation without disruption allowed the session to proceed with structure and clarity. Reinforcing her role as a stabilizing presence in the courtroom, Alexander Rodriguez, the subject under review, was referenced repeatedly throughout the hearing. Though he did not speak nor directly engage with the courtroom in this portion of the transcript, his absence from the discussion, particularly in light of the fact that he declined to return calls from the investigator, left an open question about his perspective. While the hearing did not present any visual cues or emotional response from Rodriguez, his place in the session was pivotal, as it was his actions that prompted the investigation led by Salinas. Investigator Carlos Salinas delivered his testimony with professionalism and clear command of the case details. With nearly 2 decades of experience and a background that includes thousands of similar investigations, Salinas came across as methodical, respectful, and deeply knowledgeable about both law enforcement procedure and child-focused cases. He explained key concepts such as the 120-hour DNA evidence window, the use of forensic interviews, and the distinction between acute and non-acute medical exams with clarity, offering the jury a framework to understand the technical challenges and limitations of evidence gathering in delayed outcry situations. Salinas also clarified that the absence of physical evidence was expected due to the time lapse between the alleged incidents and the report. He emphasized that the decision to refer the case to the district attorney was based on the specificity and sensory detail provided by the child during the forensic interview. The strength of his testimony came from his transparency about investigative limits and his reliance on procedural guidelines rather than conjecture. The prosecution remained focused and deliberate in its line of questioning. Their strategy was not aggressive, but rather centered on building a solid, factual foundation, allowing Salinas to explain the process in his own words. By doing so, they reinforced the credibility of the investigation and demonstrated due diligence in handling sensitive cases. While the defense did not play an active role in this portion of the transcript, their absence left the viewer to consider what future cross-examination might reveal. Their silence here may suggest a focus on later stages of testimony or additional witnesses. The overall courtroom tone was calm, respectful, and focused. There were no interruptions or emotional outbursts, and all participants maintained a professional demeanor. This created an environment conducive to careful listening and thoughtful evaluation, which is critical in cases where emotions can easily cloud the facts. In reflecting on this hearing, viewers are reminded of the complexities of investigating delayed reports and the importance of training, clear communication, and procedural discipline. Investigator Salinas stood out as a well-prepared witness, while Judge Boyd provided the necessary judicial oversight to maintain order and fairness. If you found this hearing insightful, Consider subscribing, turning on notifications, and leaving your thoughts below. Your engagement helps us continue to explore and explain the processes that guide our legal system, bringing transparency and understanding to each step taken inside the courtroom.